We'll speak and take some questions. We're happy to take some questions collectively at the end also if that's what's required. So I'll just begin by saying we've seen another report released by the Inspector of Custodial Services which suggests that the Hakea prison system is in need of urgent attention. And we have to ask the question, at what point will the state government start to heed the warning signs that are now very, very evident? Remember, when we talk about prison overcrowding, we're talking about prisoners who are sleeping on floors, who are in multiple prisoners in cramped conditions and in cells together. And we understand that those people are in there for a reason. But nonetheless, in Western Australia, we expect a certain standard, even for those who are behind bars. And remember, when the conditions present in this way, that means these prisoners are not being properly rehabilitated. If they're not being properly rehabilitated and properly cared for inside prison, it puts the prison guards' safety at risk. That is a very serious issue for those men and women who put their own lives on the line to keep us safe by keeping the people inside in an orderly fashion. And of course then, if they are not rehabilitated, we expect for them to go into prison, undertake the necessary rehabilitation, have the benefit of that rehabilitation, and then come out as better people, improved people, rehabilitated people. Therefore, our community is kept safer. And I think it is also reasonable to ask the question, if we have chronic overcrowding at Hakea Prison, whether directly or indirectly, what is the impact on magistrates, judges and the like when it comes time to sentencing? And the question can reasonably be asked, is there any impact directly or indirectly, and could it be that some people, some prisoners who should be behind bars are not getting custodial sentences because of this overcrowding? So there's a number of issues here that need to be addressed. It is very clear the proper planning has not gone into this area, into the custodial arrangements for those people, those members of our community who need to be behind bars for the community's safety and for their own rehabilitation. And I'll finish by saying all of this at a time when this government continues to be obsessed by pet projects. And there's no need for me to tell any of you or to highlight again, a racetrack is currently on the books for this state government, being planned and ultimately going to be built for a racetrack, a facility that there is no demand for, and at a price tag of $217.5 million, which we now know from the Treasurer herself at estimates is only an estimate based on draft planning documents. In other words, this state government actually has no idea what this racetrack ultimately is going to cost. And what are we missing out on? What is the community and what is the state of Western Australia missing out on in the meantime? We know about our health situation, we know about the chronic overcrowding in our primary schools, and we now know from the Inspector himself about the chronic overcrowding in Hakea Prison. It is time for the proper planning and proper allocation of funds from this state government to this very important area in our community. I'll invite Adam to say a few words, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them afterwards.
Yeah, thank you, Basil, and thank you everyone for coming here today. This report from the independent watchdog is a damning indictment on this government and their priorities. This is a prison system in crisis. Now, they're not my words. They're the words from the independent watchdog, who has been keeping a very close eye on Hakea Prison, and today has issued a report stating that there have only been marginal improvements in Hakea prisons since the independent watchdog issued a show cause notice to this government, to Minister Papalia, stating there needed to be drastic changes at Hakea Prison to ensure that the prison conducted its business appropriately. Now, that is a prison that rehabilitates the people that find themselves there. The people are going in, these prisoners are going into this prison and coming out better at the other end. Rehabilitation can occur. Instead, we have overcrowding. We have some prison cells that were built for one person, now with three, and we're now hearing reports of occasionally 4 people in those prison cells, people sleeping on mattresses on the floor. Now, this report that was released today has a number of really important recommendations, and these are basic things people having access to a shower, people having access to clean clothes. There was a show cause notice in May last year, and it isn't apparent to me that anything has been done by this government to improve the state of Hakea Prison. Let's take this one step further, though, because the report includes in it that this is a system in crisis. We have a number of prisons right across Western Australia that are overcrowded. We've had an expansion in prison population by nearly 30%, but at the same time, our prison officers' numbers have stagnated. Now, our prison officers do amazing work to keep the system running, but they're simply not getting the support they need from this government. And Minister Papalia has a lot to answer for following this show cause notice, and again, a report stating that there hasn't been enough done at Hakea Prison. Happy to take questions.
It's fairly evident that planning for the racetrack, for what it's worth, is far more advanced in the mind of the government than planning for prison reform or prison accommodation.
That is very apparent. Yeah, we have a clear plan, it would appear, from the government about the racetrack, but at the same time, there's no money at all set aside for expansion of prison services. There's no money set aside that we can see for a future in the prison system or any kind of rehabilitation focus and the like. Instead, we've seen a little bit of money for planning, but nothing actually for works on the ground.
It's a matter of priorities.
Absolutely, this is a matter of priorities. What the people of Western Australia expect is that government gets the basics right before it pursues pet projects. And putting bad people in prison and ensuring that once they come out, they're better than when they went in is one of the most basic things that government can do. And it appears to even be failing that because its priorities simply aren't right.
Do you think, apart from Burswood being a pet project, the government relies on probably what is the fact that the public really don't really care too much about prisoners and prison conditions because they think that everyone who's in prison deserves to be there?
Let's be really clear that prison isn't in place for people to have a good time. It's meant to be hard, it's not meant to be easy, and most of the people that find themselves there, particularly in our most of the prisons, are convicted criminals. Now, some are on remand and haven't been convicted, they're waiting for their day in court for their justice. Prison isn't meant to be easy. But what the community does expect is that when somebody goes in, that they come out better off. Not that they're locked away for extended periods of time, not that they don't have access to a shower or clean clothes, not that there's issues with pests and vermin in the prison. There is a basic role that people expect, and I think the reason we're not seeing a lot more attention on this is because people expect that the government's doing that very, very basic role. The report today goes to show that that's not happening. It's not happening across the system, and in particular, it's not happening at Hakea Prison, which is why they've been given a show cause notice. What are we now? 14, 16, 17 months later, we're not seeing any action.
This morning, the Treasurer was asked about a new prison, alluded to there's planning underway for a new prison, and then when pushed on it, sort of backtracked and said, one of the things we're looking at is the expansion of Casuarina. Would you like to see more clarity around the planning for new prisons and facilities?
We need to see a plan. There are experts employed by the government to look at just this. We need to see what that plan is, because it's not as simple as just more prisons and prison beds. That appears to be a really important part of the mix, but we need to look at rates of recidivism. What rehabilitation is available in the community, and how do we, once someone's out of prison, keep them out of prison by supporting them to be the best person they can be and to keep our community safe. The government needs to come out with their plan. What is the plan for corrective services in Western Australia? How are they going to address these damning findings in the Independent Watchdog's report? How are they going to do it? We're no clearer today than we were 14 months ago when they were issued a show cause notice stating, what are you going to do to fix this? The inquiry has a number of very simple recommendations that need to be carried out, and we're not seeing any traction on the ground at all. I don't want to take away from the amazing work that prison officers do day in, day out under a system in immense pressure. They've seen nearly a 30% increase in prisoners. Meanwhile, their FTE, their employment numbers have essentially stagnated.
Let's say one for the opposition leader. Just on Burswood, it was put directly to the acting premier today about whether there is a cap. Is there anything that they wouldn't spend to get the Burswood project finished? And she was not just evasive, she just refused to answer.
You know, the people of Western Australia deserve an answer. We know the problems in health, we know the problems in education, we know the problems in corrective services. We know where money needs to be spent, and we know where West Australians would prioritise that money being spent. It is not on a racetrack. Nonetheless, this government have said they're going to build a racetrack at Burswood, and they told us in their pre-election commitment that it would cost $217.5 million. We now know through the estimates process that figure is a guess. So my question to the Treasurer and the Premier is, at what price will you say it is too much money to be spending on a racetrack? Will that be $250 million or $300 million or $350 million or $400 million plus? At what number will you say this is too much money to be spending on building a racetrack? We're not going to spend West Australian taxpayers' money in that way. And the people of Western Australia deserve an answer to that straight question. And I'm disappointed that when asked those straight questions this morning, the Treasurer couldn't give straight answers.
Well, I mean, they at least deserve a business plan, don't they? Which she won't get, which she says once that's completed will go to Infrastructure WA.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that now, after we brought to the Treasurer's attention in estimates that it wasn't slated to go to Infrastructure WA, as is required by regulation, that every project over $100 million goes to Infrastructure WA. It seemed a little non-committal, but I'm pleased to hear there is now a commitment that it will go to Infrastructure WA, as it should, with a proper business case. But what is that business case going to tell us? How much is this project actually going to cost? And at what point will the government say, no, that's too much, we're not going to do it, we're going to scrap it? And the people of WA deserve an answer. The Premier or the Treasurer should say, if it gets to this amount, we won't do it anymore because that will be too much.
If the business case do stack up, do you think higher price tag would be worth it?
Well, I am led to believe that this is somehow part of the economic diversification strategy of this state government. I'm yet to be convinced on that, but let's see what the business case says.
Is it responsible for a government to put a maximum price on a project? Because doesn't that just open up to whoever's doing the work?
What's responsible of a state government is when they commit to a project that has lukewarm community appetite at absolute best, they tell us what it is going to cost. And they told us pre-election it would be $217.5 million. They've told us post-election, actually, we're not sure what it's going to cost. That was a guess. We need to know. We need to know what it's going to cost. Because as you know, health, education, corrective services and many other areas in our community need urgent injections of government money. And they're not getting it because of these pet projects taking priority.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone. I'll let you all out of the rain.
Very good to see you, Adam. Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Good to see you.